couldn't get through an interview without asking about crypto, but in particular, Russia just said that they would accept Bitcoin as a payment for their energy resources. What does that say to you about where we are in the crypto conversation?
Well, crypto is obviously grown by leaps and bounds, and it's now playing a significant role, not really so much in transactions,
right,
but in investment decisions of lots of Americans. And the president just issued a couple of weeks ago an executive order tasking us and other agencies with thinking about the regulation of crypto.
I mean, you're less skeptical about it than in previous. I mean, we've been talking about it together for a long time now, and I think you've had a skepticism about crypto technology.
I have a little bit of skepticism because there are, I think, valid concerns around it. Some have to do with financial stability, consumer investor protection, use for illicit transactions and other things.
Right.
On the other hand, there are benefits from crypto, and we recognize that innovation in the payment system can be a healthy thing. We would like to come out eventually with recommendations that will create a regulatory environment in which healthy innovation
can. And then finally,
Happy Bitcoin Tuesday, freaks. It's your boy Odell here for Citadel Dispatch 60. If you're listening to this after the fact on the podcast feeds, that was Treasury Secretary Yellen talking about a Bitcoin circular economy on CNBC this week. Citadel Dispatch is an interactive live show about Bitcoin distributed systems, privacy, and open source software. I appreciate all the freaks who continue to support the show. Dispatch is 100% audience funded without ads or sponsors. Could not happen without your support. Keeping Dispatch purely focused on actionable Bitcoin discussion and freedom tech. The easiest way to support the show is through Podcasting 2.0. My two favorite Podcasting 2.0 apps are Breeze and Fountain Podcasts. They work like a regular podcasting app, but you load them up with sats. You choose how many sats per minute Dispatch is worth to you, and those sats stream directly to my node as you're listening. Another way to support the show is through my BTC Pay server, which is at citadeldispatch.com. You can support with on-chain or Lightning. I also have a BIP47 payment code and associated Samurai Paynim, which you can pay from Sparrow Wallet or Samurai Wallet. You can also find that on citadeldispatch.com. Hopefully other wallets will join soon. Dispatch is broadcast on Twitch, Twitter, and Bitcoin TV. Bitcoin TV holds all the video archives. You can also find all the audio archives on your favorite podcast app. It doesn't have to be a Podcasting 2.0 app. I've heard some issues with Fountain Podcasts. I've experienced them myself as well. It is definitely still early in development over there. They are listening to your concerns. Just to be absolutely clear, my single favorite podcasting app is AntennaPod. Hopefully they will add Podcasting 2.0 at some time. But if you're looking for a good podcasting app that's free and open source software, highly recommend AntennaPod. Works really well on Calyx and Graphene and just general Android phones. I don't think it's available on iPhone. And if you still want to support the show in that situation, you can use the BTC Pay server or my BIP47 payment code. With all that said, before we get started, I also have a special announcement that a bunch of us are going to be in Miami, obviously, for Bitcoin 2022. I will be doing a live Citadel Dispatch there on April 5th, the anniversary of Executive Order 6102, when FDR tried to steal everyone's gold, which also happens to be Satoshi's symbolic birthday. It'll be at 2 p.m., same venue as BitDevs, right before BitDevs, so it'll be that for an hour, Citadel Dispatch for an hour. We open up and then there's like a 45-minute little happy hour there, and then BitDevs happens. So if you're interested in that, that's citadeldispatch.com/Miami. I'm charging 100,000 sats for that, includes entry and free drinks. So once I get that venue covered, I'm just going to basically come in with like cases of beer and ranch water and maybe some regular water so people stay hydrated. And maybe there'll be a little bit left over that will go towards supporting the show. But I'm trying to keep it obviously as low cost as possible. To you fiat maxis out there, when I listed it at 100,000 sats, that was about $42. Now it's about $48. So with all that said, we have a really great show today. It's focused on building a Bitcoin circular economy. A lot of you guys have probably heard me talk about this in the past. A key aspect of our threat model when we talk about Bitcoin and privacy is this whole idea of KYC on-ramps, these regulated on-ramps that are keeping extensive lists of Bitcoiners in our transaction history. Privacy tools help. Learning how to obtain Bitcoin without those burdensome KYC regulations that often put Bitcoiners at risk help. But long term, what really will help is a proper Bitcoin circular economy where people aren't buying Bitcoin, they are earning Bitcoin. They're not selling Bitcoin, they're spending Bitcoin. It distributes us away from these central points of failure. So with that topic in mind, we have a great group of panelists that are been very focused on making this vision a reality sooner rather than later. I personally think that a circular economy is somewhat inevitable, but the question is, how long does it take us to get there? And these great dudes have been trying to make that reality way quicker than it otherwise would be. So first off, we have Brian Harrington here. Brian, how's it going?
Hey guys, thankful to be here talking about this. Number go up and payments go round are both so important, and that's how we win.
Let's fucking go. Brian is focused on building, helping grow the Bitcoin circular economy in Southern California. We have Santos here from Chamber of Satoshi, focused on building the Bitcoin circular economy in Arizona. How's it going, Santos?
It's going great. Very bullish. I think there's more ways to earn sats than ever.
Let's fucking go. And we have Michael from Oshi app, which is a project that is specifically designed to build out the Bitcoin circular economy. How's it going, Michael?
Hey, it's going great, man. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I can't wait to talk about why B-commerce is so much better than any other form of commerce out there.
You just call it B-commerce?
B-commerce, for sure, man.
The evolution of e-commerce?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Make no mistake.
Well, I love it. This for whatever reason, this is the first time I've heard the term B-commerce, but I dig it. Do you have the website?
It's been taken by some bank, but
Okay.
Don't worry. We'll be able to buy it off from there.
You're lucky I even asked. I was just gonna throw a question at you and then just try and go to Namecheap and buy it. So
Yeah, it's definitely B-commerce. Everybody can use that. That's how we're going to position ourselves to take over the world of e-commerce.
So I mean, let's get started here. When you look at, let's start with Michael, since I don't know. Let's just start with Michael. Michael, when you look at, trying to grow the pie and get more businesses to start accepting Bitcoin, how do you frame it? How do you think about it? What is your framing here?
Yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time trying to figure that out. And what I learned over time is if we just run in there and we're like, hey, you should accept Bitcoin because central banks and inflation and all of these other things, privacy concerns, tyrannical regimes, most businesses do not care. They don't care.
Right.
They have enough to worry about. Their, labor costs are going up. If they could even find labor, their rent's going up. They have a ton of problems. And how I frame it is, hey, how about we bring you more customers? How about you offer your customers Bitcoin rewards to actually incentivize people to spend Bitcoin, while also getting people to earn Bitcoin and getting businesses to potentially hold the Bitcoin, utilizing the network and the asset if they want, or they can utilize the network without actually holding on to the asset. It's their choice.
Do most merchants So when you say they can utilize the network without holding the asset, you mean just immediately convert to USD?
Right. Yeah. In this case, this would be as kind of a stepping stone for them. But most businesses are actually choosing to just hold the Bitcoin. But just having, I guess you could say, like that backboard as they're just dipping their toes into Bitcoin is really helpful. Just giving them that option to say, hey, like, I know you have a business to run. Maybe you'd be interested in converting a certain portion of this to dollars. Again, that's not what I recommend. But the reality is these businesses have bills to pay and they have businesses to run. So they're still often having to pay these fiat-based bills. So it does help to have that option for them.
And specifically with Oshi on the merchant side. So, I mean, why don't you just go into real quick, like, what is Oshi?
Yeah, so it's just a really easy way from the business side to introduce them to Bitcoin. We can get them set up with a Bitcoin payment provider of their choice, whether that's OpenNode or IBEX or even their own BTC Pay server. On the slim chance that these businesses have one of those, we can get them connected to our platform via just invoice API keys. And they're effectively able to promote their products and services by offering Bitcoin rewards. So if you want to purchase or sell a coffee, you can say, dude, yeah, we're going to do like 5% back in Bitcoin rewards if you purchase this coffee, using, say, either your own Bitcoin Lightning wallet or using Strike or whatever the customer wants to use, right? We're definitely not here to make perfect be the enemy of good. But
That's
from the
exactly what
consumer,
we're here for. Sorry,
yeah,
continue.
yeah. So the consumer um, is then incentivized to actually want to participate in the Bitcoin economy because there is an incentive, because the novelty of payments, sending and receiving Bitcoin payments wears off over time, and then it's just effectively sending money, regardless of how profound the Bitcoin network is, and the yeah, just that excitement wears off, and then the ideology of Bitcoiners, all over the world, that will only get us so far in terms of, making the Bitcoin circular economy go round. So
So when I open the Oshi app, there's a map, right? I guess it pulls my location. There's a map, and then I can see where there's Oshi merchants and what they offer and how many sats back I get, right?
exactly, yeah.
Now, we in general on the show we don't like location permissions. Or do you have any intention of monetizing our data or storing our data or location data?
No, we have no intention of doing that.
Okay,
By all
great.
means, you can please turn that off if you don't want it. It's only, whenever we see a lot of people using the app, because in general, like I said, the ideological, users and the people that just want to spend Bitcoin as a novelty, that will kind of run dry. You have to provide a really awesome experience for users, and oftentimes, whenever they open up the app for the first time, um, they're like trying to find businesses near them, and if they can't see that little blue dot on their map that shows where they
People
are,
love the blue dot.
yeah, people freak out. They're like, "Where am I? Where are these businesses?" Like, so we just added that as an opt-in kind of thing.
Fair enough. Do you see any merchants? Are any of your merchants Bitcoin only?
Yeah, so there actually are quite a few of them. I would say most of them are just holding the Bitcoin.
Oh no,
Um,
that's not what I mean. Like, are there any that don't accept credit card that only accept Bitcoin?
no, no, none of the merchants. Well, okay, in El Salvador, yes, we do have some merchants in
Because
El Salvador.
you have Oshi merchants in El Salvador.
We have some Oshi merchants in El Salvador. Yeah, we were kind of testing it out down
Such a
there.
fucking hustler.
You can buy fresh coconut water for $1.25 on Oshi, and this guy who's never accepted a digital payment before in his life, he's always operated on cash. He's been unable to participate in any sort of digital economy his entire life. Now can give you like 5% sats back on a coconut water to anyone in the world over Lightning, and then the
That's
funds go
awesome.
straight to his Bitcoin Beach wallet. So.
I mean, the reason I bring it up is because you say like the novelty wears off, from like the ideologues just trying to like spread Bitcoin. To me, like the incentives to spend Bitcoin are, I guess, with the addition of Oshi app now, is threefold. It's because I'm looking for a more private spending option. If I can spend in cash, then obviously cash is the most private. But if it's between credit card or Bitcoin, you can get a privacy gain from spending with Bitcoin. The second reason, which is probably one of the more common reasons, is the merchant just only accepts Bitcoin. So, for instance, if you want to go to the Citadel Dispatch live event in Miami, I do not accept fiat. So you have to either decide to send me sats or not come. Same with, the NODL, for instance. If you want to buy a NODL node, you can't pay with credit card. You have to pay with Bitcoin. And then I guess the third reason is sats back. I mean, everyone loves a good discount. Some of your discounts are very, very intense. What I've seen, like 40%, 50% discounts. I guess they're not discounts; they're sats back. Technically, it's an important nuance, but
Right.
I guess those would be the three main reasons. So that's why I asked that question.
Yeah.
And also, what I was thinking is, I don't know if you guys remember, but in 2013, I mean, I don't know if you guys were around in like 2013 to 2014, 2015, before the Bcash hard fork happened. A lot of the Bcashers were very pro Bitcoin circular economy. But what happened was it was all onboarding towards like BitPay and stuff, where the merchants were auto selling for fiat. And I understand that there's a point there in that, businesses have fiat expenses, but there's, one of the things I like about how IBEX and OpenNode work as opposed to BitPay is that you can have like on OpenNode, they have like a slider, like you decide, I want to keep 70% in Bitcoin, 30% in fiat or something because I have my expenses. But I just felt like it wasn't like the merchants were actually being convinced of like the benefits of Bitcoin. They were just being convinced that like BitPay could onboard them really easily. And it wasn't sticky or anything. And it was just like, I was just, why do I want to pay like my AT&T bill with Bitcoin and just have them auto dump it for fiat through like a regulated party that hates Bitcoin?
Can I jump off that?
Yeah. So Brian, just real quick, like I forgot to tell you guys ahead of time, like don't consider me the host. All you guys should just jump in and out. Feel free to go.
Yeah. All right. Let me jump off that and hit just a few high things that like I want to say. The OG Bitcoiners were great at talking about Bitcoin. They were not great at talking about personal finance. Okay. Why does this matter for circular economy? Why does this matter for circular economy? Because then you're right. And when the Bcash fork happened, I think are just only now realizing the like social layer impact of that as well, because we lost a lot of that circular economy momentum. So super like in my whole theme of 2022, I've been trying to just like leave all baggage behind and just start from where we are. Because the other thing with circular economy that like, dude, the lockdowns radicalized me on circular economy. Like, I don't appreciate like the way that we were like treated by like people in power. And so it really needs to be like a Bitcoin is happening right now in person, and it needs to like start creating like, and it is creating like value and freedom for people right now in person. But that's what kind of got me down this path of like, I don't love saying like we're so early anymore, because saying we're so early, I feel like just comes across as like very like apathetic. Like, and because humans do have the ability to like impact the world. And so there's all that combined with, yes, the Bcash hard fork. We lost some of that social momentum of those people that wanted to see Bitcoin replace fiat, like in transactions. Okay. And then I can't fully like put it on the OGs of not being good at personal finance, because what has happened since then? What has happened since then is that the apps have come such a long way. Like the apps have come so far to where if Strike and Cash App are going to continue to pay athletes to use the word paycheck and Bitcoin in the same sentence, and this whole pay me in Bitcoin thing is happening, then when normies already will ask you when you talk about Bitcoin, hey, Bitcoin's like, it's a big deal, it's taking over. Oh yeah, well, how can I spend it at Walmart? That normie is not trying to like needle you and be like, oh, it's never going to work, can't use it. They're not trying to say that. They're not asking for a lecture in Austrian economics. They're asking you to tell them how to do business outside of the dollar. Like, I think what's wild is that normies and like hardcore like Bitcoiners that want to watch like Bitcoin replace fiat are actually more on the same page than we give them credit for. So like, I don't think like, yeah, I think by normies being ready to like spend Bitcoin, they don't need like a lecture. You just need to tell them like when and where they could do it. And then just closing kind of a little bit again on this personal finance thing, the tools are now here for you to take 100% of your paycheck in Bitcoin, and the math is now here. The holding period, like the inflation per day on the dollar is like closing the reasons for holding dollars at all, even for a week. And so what's wild, and combined with number go up, obviously, but so what's wild is that like we think that by using dollars as our checking account and using Bitcoin as our savings account, we're savings on taxes, and we're also like causing number go up because we're not selling back for fiat. I don't think either of those things are true anymore. I think actually, in a weird way, by taking 100% of your paycheck in Bitcoin and then buying the foreign currency dollars when and if you need it, you're actually like, you're then net sitting on more sats for more days per year, which is literally making your family wealthier. And none of that was there back in like so the tools weren't there, the inflation wasn't there. Like that's why this whole thing is like coming full circle, because the tools are now here for you to 100% hold Bitcoin as your base money. The financial incentive is here to do it as your base money. And then we can talk about, yes, all the game theory of the merchants getting to the point where it's like, hey, yeah, like due to COVID and due to the lockdowns and due to rising inflation, like we accept Bitcoin now, like please pay with this or pay a higher price to use fiat. Like, so, but because people love to say it doesn't make economic sense to spend your Bitcoin, so just hodl your Bitcoin. Okay, but then what if there's actually the economic incentive to get paid 100% Bitcoin and still eat the cap gains, because number go up is actually like going up enough to even cover the cap gains and your family's ending wealthier.
You want to talk about the cap gain spending issue?
Sure, yeah.
Why don't you explain it?
What else about it? So yeah, I mean, so Bitcoin is property, like, so they're asking you to pay like capital gains taxes when you swap it back for dollars. What I foresee happening is these,
or when you spend it.
Yeah, or when you spend it. And what I think is going to happen is, so with Cash App wants to be your bank. NYDIG is partnering with credit unions. Strike wants to be your bank. Fold wants to be your bank. And there's this thing where it's like, what do we even use banks for? Wells Fargo, like Chase, Bank of America, the really only thing we actually use them for is they're an ACH portal. We all Bitcoiners need to learn about the ACH network. Like because the ACH network is the only thing we use banks for. But now all these Bitcoin apps are now adding in like ACH portals to where you can receive your paycheck directly in Bitcoin. And so they also are going to all add, I feel like they're all going to add ACH out. So you're going to be able to hold your Bitcoin up until the very last day that your mortgage is due, and then ACH out into your mortgage payment. And then that Bitcoin checking account will spit out a regular like report that then you plug into TurboTax. And so, yes, your Bitcoin, and right now I'm like diving into the personal finance element of it. I understand that a lot of this will run counter to like some other like ways of seeing Bitcoin. What I'm trying to demonstrate is that from a personal finance on paper Bitcoin checking account perspective, you can beat the capital gains taxes and still end the year wealthier, because I believe that's then a flywheel for more and more businesses jumping onto this, which then provides cover for those that are using Bitcoin in different ways to still shop at those same merchants. So it's still like, I have this whole thing in general that I actually believe that like suits and anarchists are like more on the same team than they give themselves credit for. So just understand that with a lot of what I'm saying. But so I believe the math is there for Bitcoin checking accounts. What's that?
Sorry. I said fuck the suits.
Continue. Yeah. Yes. I believe the math is there. I believe the math is there for you to use a Bitcoin checking account and hold 100% of your money in Bitcoin and become comfortable with either buying the foreign currency dollars with it or buying something directly with it. And I no longer believe that like buying the foreign currency dollars causes number to go down. I used to believe that, but I don't believe that anymore.
My favorite part about like the whole argument about holding, 100% Bitcoin is like the argument on Twitter was between people who hold like 98% Bitcoin and 100% Bitcoin, and they just argued over the 2% like vehemently. Like everyone
Dude,
just
I'm
went
not
at each
sure
other.
though. I'm not sure though. Like those, there's definitely a mental, like I think like that last part of like paying your mortgage with it, I definitely think like changes brain cells. I think it changes brain cells.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Santos, what are your thoughts here? I mean, you've been onboarding merchants in Arizona. What have they said that you agree with? How do you think about it, and what do you
Yeah,
disagree with? More
how
importantly,
I think about it is like comparing it as a technology to the traditional banking system. I came from a background of banks. I worked at Bank of America in 2015 and then quit my job. I had discovered Bitcoin and I didn't want to work in that industry anymore. So I taught myself. So I did preferred sales prior to leaving, and it was mainly like tailoring the bank's benefits. So when you look at Lightning as a payment layer, it's superior nearly in every respect because one, banks can shut off your account at any given time to conduct a financial review. I worked in a risk department before that did that, and you don't have to worry about that if you're essentially like managing your own funds. So I think about it from that perspective. Like you don't have to worry about your accounts payable nearly as much. And then you think about it from the payment processing side. Stripe charges 3% plus 30 cents. Square Terminal charges 3% plus 10 cents. Even using like a Lightning service provider, you can lower your cost to 1%, which is massive, especially if you're doing anywhere between $5 and $10 transactions. That lowers it from roughly 9%, 10%. So then you also don't carry the risk of like fraud or billing disputes, which often as a merchant, even if someone's submitting a illegitimate report, those funds are taken out of your account anywhere between 30 and 60 days. It's just debited while the bank continues to review that. So merchants understand this. They have to deal with this on a frequent basis. And if you can explain to them, well, you're not only going to reduce your operating costs, and keep more of the money for the value that you're producing, you're also going to lower your risk dramatically. So that's kind of the way that I think about payments using Bitcoin.
do you notice that, like, I mean, specifically what you were comparing it to seems to be credit cards. I mean, like, I know in like the Austin area, there's a surprisingly amount of no cash businesses. Do you guys see that? Like most of the time, Bitcoin's competing against credit cards and not cash, and cash has kind of just disappeared from the equation for the most part.
Yeah, I think people particularly like paying with credit cards because of the benefits associated with them, such as rewards, fraud protection, those sort of things. And I think with cash, like it's a bit outside of the circular economy. I think of the circular economy as like earn and spend uh, completely in sats. And outside of it, you have fiat to Bitcoin kind of conversions, which I think like what we're kind of experimenting with one of our partners at the Chamber of Satoshi and the Arizona Bitcoin Network, they basically provide as SECO terminals to merchants and meetup members with very low risk. So then people that have never used Bitcoin, never really learned much about it, can now get onboarded on chain or Lightning with essentially there's no KYC that's required. It's just a cash exchange. So I see that then at that point they can use cash to purchase sats, which they can use like basically it's an LNU or a withdrawal on a receipt. They can scan and load into whatever their choice of Lightning wallet can be, or have it sent to like an on-chain address and then enter the circular Bitcoin economy. So that's how like I'm imagining it and how we're setting up the Satoshi Day, which is an event celebrating a business beginning to accept Bitcoin. So I don't really see it competing as much with cash because then you can even have your operating costs lower. But I think the problem with cash is the friction that it has. So with Lightning, the payment flow is also better. One of the worst experiences you can have, and a big complaint by consumers, is like point of sale decline. With Lightning, you don't have to worry about that, especially if you're using a Lightning service provider, or you have a self-hosted solution where you know how to do the channel management. So that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, and I would just say, like, for thousands of years, like let's just say the past few decades has been an anomaly. Okay, like in terms of the internet spread it up, everything is now digital. Payments are now digital. To participate in e-commerce, you have to have a debit or credit card, generally speaking. For thousands of years, that was not the case, right? Commerce occurred between the buyer and seller without any financial intermediaries, without any payment processors, for 0% processing fees. Settlement was final. It was instant. There were no chargebacks, right? Unless you wanted to like beat the dude up after you handed him your money or whatever. So like, which is inherently risky. Today, people can just call up the bank for whatever reason they want and they can charge it back. So my point here is that what Bitcoin, and Lightning specifically enables, at the very least, like at the protocol level, is for, near instant, near free settlement. Now, currently, we're using these different third parties that are providing a valuable service, right? Like, let's say OpenNode or IBEX, or like you use Voltage maybe, and you spin up your own node there. Like, they are providing a very valuable service to help you process these payments. But for all intents and purposes, like, as we all know, Bitcoin is digital peer-to-peer cash. And we are reinstating that like right before our very eyes. And this is where I like to talk about this whole like B-commerce, e-commerce thing. Like, most of the world cannot participate in any form of e-commerce. And even in the developed world, they barely participate. Like, the small businesses are getting fucked. Like, they have access to participate. They can use a bunch of different third-party services to participate. Like, let's say small restaurants, coffee shops, they could use DoorDash or Grubhub or all these things that are charging them anywhere from like 10 to 30%, let's say, just to participate in e-commerce, because people aren't really going to their website, right? They're not really going or reading their email blasts as like this single small business, right? Anyway, with that being said, like roughly 15% of all retail commerce is done online in the United States. That's it. 15% of online of retail commerce is done online. 85% do not participate, right, in e-commerce, or not. Obviously 85% of retail sales
So like
are
85%
in store.
There's a brick and mortar.
Let's just say I mean basically with the swipe of a card or handing somebody cash, 85%. And this is like in the most, technologically advanced country in the history of the world, arguably, right?
Right. I would think it was. I would think that there would be more e-commerce. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And then
Especially after all the COVID policies and stuff just destroyed small businesses.
Exactly. So what happened during that was, in 2020, I don't know where it's sitting at now, but in 2020, e-commerce jumped up 30%, and businesses were forced to effectively, pay these higher fees to participate in e-commerce, because it's inherently more expensive as well to accept debit or credit cards online than it is to swipe the card in store. And this is where B-commerce comes in, because for the first time ever, it's actually cheaper to accept an online payment online than it is in store. The settlement is near instant. It's near free, depending on how you choose to go about accepting that Bitcoin payment. And in my opinion, this is going to be like, this is B-commerce. Like, this is going to revolutionize how we see e-commerce. There are people in countries that have never had access to debit and credit cards at all are now able to accept online payments. Like, it is going to be insane. And it's basically the reinstatement of a cash-like, money in the digital world. And that's like fucking exciting.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. 100% agree. One thing that one of the merchants that we partnered with, Beal Beans, one thing that really resonated with them is they have all kinds of relationships with farmers all over the world, like Brazil, Ethiopia. And one thing that excited them is they are now able to form a direct relationship. Like, their model is entirely like building customer relationships, farmer relationships, and that's how they differentiate themselves. So now they can use digital cash to send, across borders directly to their farmers. And now there's more ways than ever to be able to use that Bitcoin, and it's only gonna continue to grow. So now, like, they can own their relationships and they can transact with whomever they want and maximize the value that they create. It becomes much more cooperative.
So, I mean, Santos, that's a really interesting point. So, I mean, earlier on, Michael was talking about how there's this issue in this bootstrap phase, right, where these merchants have fiat bills to pay, but they're receiving Bitcoin. Ultimately, the ideal situation is what you just described, where they're actually able to pay their downstream suppliers Bitcoin for the supplies they need, the services they need. Is this, and we kind of saw this in El Salvador because just the government mandated it. So all those businesses don't necessarily need to convert into fiat because all the other businesses have to accept Bitcoin, so they're able to pay their suppliers inherently. Is this something that you specifically set up with this merchant? Like, did you put them in contact with their suppliers, or was that just coincidental? Is that something like you think about connecting maybe two different businesses that can basically have a circular economy together? Is that a thing you consider, or is that just kind of happened?
Yeah, that's something that we consider. That's something that Blake and I, the owner of Beal Beans, it's like a family-owned coffee roastery and pour-overs, and that's something that we've talked about extensively. And that's something that really resonated with him, is the freedom aspect of it and owning the relationship. It's pretty horrible to essentially go through like a wire transfer where the farmer is losing out significantly on the value that they created. So it's really exciting to them to be able to then pay them directly. And we've gone over, many different use cases in terms of like spending the sats as well. There's more and more options that are being developed in terms of products. More regions are being covered, more open source tools that you can use to be able to enable your customers to purchase from you. So I think that's kind of the way that we've discussed it and thought about it.
I just want that's fantastic. I mean, I just want to do a quick shout out to Anarchio Crypto. I invited him on the show, but he didn't want to dox his voice, so he's participating in our Matrix chat live while the show's going on. So I just wanted to say I appreciate him and glad to see him in the live chat. Brian,
I appreciate
on.
what he said too, and was going to reply to the comment. Yeah, if you want me to.
Hit us. What was the comment?
Yeah, so Anarcho Crypto makes a great point. He's in there, as they're describing Bitcoin circular economies, they're saying rent for cash / Bitcoin without KYC, builds circular economies outside of the state, no government ID required for jobs, apartments, healthcare, etc. Cash in hand, gray markets already offer this. Bitcoin doesn't only fight the state's monopoly on money, but also its monopoly on identity. Bitcoin uses pseudonymous public-private key pairs for authentication instead of a state-signed identity, as with banking. So, you have any comments first, or? I was going to hop off it. Okay, so to go off of that, I agree with those strategies. I think those strategies will only work for a certain segment of people, right? And I think this is the classic case of the way I liked the way when Odell was the way that Bcashers were trying to talk about circular economy back in the day, or just Bitcoiners in general were trying to talk about circular economy back in the day, versus kind of what I'm trying to see in 2022 is kind of this blended model of like, there's going to be Bitcoin checking accounts. And I know like coming on to Citadel Dispatch and like being the Bitcoin bank account guy is like not a great, like that doesn't make me like the awesome guest of the day. Like, but what I want to say is like people having Bitcoin bank accounts and like the like financial incentives at the personal finance level to hold the Bitcoin bank accounts and still have them be able to like print off a statement from that and get a mortgage like with that bank statement, is those people are still shopping at the same places that Santos is onboarding and that Michael is onboarding. And so I also had this discussion on Twitter, like back in the day when Orange County Bitcoin Network got our first taco shop on it and our first burger place on it. Some people were saying that like, oh, if they're using like OpenNode, like I can't use my like non-KYC wallet to like shop at OpenNode. And I was like, dude, I fully disagree with that. Or there was a reverse thing where some guys were talking about if a 3D printed gun site is like running BTC Pay server, they were trying to say that like, oh, Strike app isn't good because Strike has KYC. And if they pay the BTC Pay server, that's bad then for the like gun shop owner. And I was like, again, I fully disagree with that. Like Bitcoin fixes that. Bitcoin fixes that. It allows, like, the very fact that someone with a Bitcoin bank account through whatever app, and someone who's fully like non-KYC running their wallet and are their own bank from their phone can buy coffee together at the same shop that chooses to either run OpenNode or run BTC Pay Server. Like, that's beautiful. Like, that's literally beautiful. And that's Bitcoin is winning. That's commerce happening outside of the dollar. Like, that is then the dollar is going to lose traction, and more entrepreneurs are then going to be able to say, hey, sorry, dollars are no longer accepted here because, you know, please step out of line and go use the Bitcoin ATM if like you're still not up to speed. And so that's just the reason why I'm like kind of bringing the personal finance today is that's the way I see it sending traffic to all these businesses we're onboarding.
Yeah, that's a really excellent point. It's like there are different options for different degrees of like understanding and technical capability or relationships. There can be like different phases or levels to it if you kind of want to gamify it. You can start off with, you know, a custodied wallet to some extent, and then move on as you learn and go deeper down the rabbit hole and understand the different terminology, the technical aspects, the systems engineering, and move on to your own. And there are a lot of companies that are even making it easier and more frictionless to begin and explore that, and to be able to start hosting or operating your own node, and then to branch out to then even doing like a completely self-hosted solution, depending upon like the size and scale of your business and where you're conducting transactions. Obviously, if you're like an e-commerce business, you're going to have significantly more traffic and you'll need more resiliency in your nodes. So maybe that, you know, the voltage solution can be like fault tolerance. If your own self-hosted solution fails, then you could forward your payment to, you know, another node hosted in the cloud. Or maybe if you're like a business that is brick and mortar, or like literally person to person in person, then a self-hosted solution will completely cover all of your transacting needs, and you won't need to have like the same level of infrastructure requirements. So it's like amazing, to Brian's point, that these two different individuals all speak the same language, which is Bitcoin. It doesn't, like, if you look at like Zelle and Cash App, they cannot talk. They're not speaking the same language, even though they're still transacting in the dollar. It's essentially like not possible for them. But using Lightning and Lightning address, it even makes it like even easier to do so and speak the same language.
The reason why circular economies matter is like the gray market circular economies that already exist today on cash are not large enough to make a dent into like the establishment and clown world. Like what Bitcoin commerce available to everyone does, and the mindset of Bitcoin commerce available to everyone does, is it shifts everyone away from using dollars, and it creates an overlapping circle with the gray markets that are already there. And so like that's why I think like both anyone working on commerce in Bitcoin instead of dollars, I think is like that. I just think it's like the highest leverage piece of freedom things that you could do, because you're physically changing brain cells and getting people to use a currency that they didn't grow up on. Yeah.
And like, I just want to say, like, well, first of all, tip of the hat to Anarchio Crypto. He probably has like one of the best Bitcoin circular economies articles I've read to date. So definitely check that out. But yeah, I mean, like, Bitcoin changes people. Like whenever I first got started on Bitcoin, like I was doing everything wrong. I didn't know what the hell was going on. I had like very little regard for privacy. And over the years, like learning and understanding Bitcoin, like it totally changes. Like Brian keeps on saying, like it changes your brain cells. Like you're changing people's perspectives on things and letting people get into it, like whatever way they're going to get into it, but then like leveling up over time, like becoming more self-sovereign as an individual, like a consumer, as a business, and like leveraging the inherent like incentives of Bitcoin. Like it's going to be cheaper to do all of these things on your own if you're just willing to like level up, right? You're willing to learn about how to self-host and about how to obtain like KYC free coin and so on. Like and like that's where it gets into the thing, like let's not let perfect be the enemy of good. Obviously, it's like, man, people are going to start flooding into this, and like, I don't know, like I'm just so bullish on how Bitcoin affects people. Like the statists will inevitably no longer be statists. Like the people that don't give a
You
shit
don't
about
think they'll still
privacy
be
inevitably
statists?
will. There will always be statists, but it's going to be dwindling over time,
I
right?
mean,
Or
they just
maybe,
won't be using state money, but they'll still be statists. I
yeah, there are
like.
people that own
I think
Bitcoin right now that are statists. So I don't know.
I mean, we definitely have. Bitcoin's for enemies. Bitcoin is for everyone. So there's going to be people of all walks of life. And I mean, if Bitcoin can't succeed in that situation, then it was doomed to fail anyway. But I expect it to succeed in that situation. I mean, there's a lot of good points made all around. I just want to pull back a tiny bit um, on Brian's KYC comment. So you, I agree with the premise that if a merchant is accepting via OpenNode um, or IBEX, and I have a no KYC stack, I can obviously continue. I can use that infrastructure just as if the merchant was using BTC Pay Server. Now, there's benefits and negatives to the merchant. Obviously, the major negative to the merchant is privacy, but also custodial risk. They can get their account canceled just like it can get their account can get canceled on um, their account can get canceled on like a PayPal or a Stripe or uh, Square terminals or Toast terminals, whatever terminal the business uses that is for fiat. But let's go to the consumer side. Now, on the consumer side, you mentioned specifically. So with Lightning, what's nice about Lightning, first of all, uh, to the freaks that haven't listened to the full Citadel Dispatch archives, I had a great conversation with Tony about Lightning privacy. I think it was episode 21. If you want to go check out the nuances of Lightning privacy, but the on the big scale of Lightning privacy, the sender has a lot better privacy guarantees than the receiver. So a lot of those pain points that, like, if you pay an open node and you potentially are doxing yourself to a KYC merchant, um, go out the window, because if you pay with Lightning, the sender gets better privacy, except for one key thing, which is the memo and the
Yes.
node pub key. So you specifically, Brian, mentioned like supporting the 3D gun community with Strike.
Mhm.
If that memo in your Lightning memo says, supporting the 3D gun community or buying
Right.
this 3D gun part or something, Strike, a regulated service, knows that. They also know
Mhm.
the pub key you're paying. So, Bitcoin can fix that, but the tools as they're currently set up, there's going to be some issues there. People are going to get their
How
accounts closed. They're going to end up on lists they didn't think they were going to be on, stuff like that.
the person sending will, right? But the
Yeah.
receiver, is the receiver able to block a payment from Strike or from Cash App and say we don't
No,
want the payment? No.
no.
Because
Correct.
I donated to the I sent money to the Canadian truckers through Cash App.
Right. And so Cash
Like
App knows that, and if the government wanted to, um, if the
for
government wanted
sure.
every
And
American on a list that sent that money, you'd be on that list.
yes. Look, and that's so to me, that's what's so beautiful about it is that the reliance is on like the onus is on the sender. And so I think like by businesses, if a bunch of businesses start running OpenNode, as they will, right? Like it's opening the amount of places that no KYC people can shop. That's why I see it as like a benefit.
Right. Right. I agree on that point. No, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, and it's extremely powerful
And
because it's an open monetary network.
yeah. And that's what makes the pitch like what's so amazing is the pitch. Dude, pitching businesses is so much easier than it used to be already. Um
Yeah. I mean, I have businesses. I didn't know if you were pausing there, Brian, or
no, go.
okay. Yeah. Yeah. Like I have businesses where I walk in And I'm like, hey, do you want to like offer Bitcoin rewards to your customers? And some of them, like, granted, this doesn't happen often, but it happens often enough to where they're like, hey, like, I've actually been meaning or wanting to get involved with Bitcoin, and I just didn't know how. Like, nobody's talked with me about it yet. Like, I didn't know where to get started. And like, am I going to get them started on a BTC Pay server? No. Like, they don't know how this works at all. Am I going to get them started with like IBEX or OpenNode? Yeah. And as they go through this journey, like, they're going to level up. And like, so yeah, it's getting so much easier.
Yeah, dude.
So
okay. And I thought of what I want to say, because it's getting so much easier on your side. And then the reason why I'm coming in like so hot talking about the personal finance and that stuff today is because what's so annoying to me is back when we did our first taco shop, just getting hit with the like, man, like, what about cap gains? Man, like, don't we have to hodl? Like, what, like, all this stuff or whatever. And what's annoying is when you do get someone excited about it and they are like, hey, I've been looking for a way to get involved. And then there's just no Bitcoiners in that community, like, or in that place that are like up to speed on why it makes sense from a personal finance perspective. And as Odell goes about, like, the privacy perspective, to use Bitcoin as your money. Like, this is good. Having a restaurant in your town accepting Bitcoin is good. And the time is now for this. And the time's like ready for all of this.
Let me be clear here on the privacy perspective. You know, if you spend with credit card, it's if you spend with credit card, it's the same as spending poorly on Bitcoin. So
exactly.
So if the alternative is credit card, you can only improve yourself. If the alternative is cash, the story is different because cash is just natively private.
Except for cash is hyperinflating. And that's the whole thing. So like this whole thing of like cash is good because it's no KYC. Like, no, that's like a moot point now. Like,
no,
cash,
that's not my point that it's no
losing...
KYC. My point is that it's private by default. So if privacy is your priority, you can't shoot yourself in the foot by paying with cash. But if you use Bitcoin without understanding the nuances, that transaction might not be private. But if you're comparing it to credit card, it can't be worse than a credit card.
Which is fair. And so that's why I think talking about the personal finance benefits of spending Bitcoin are just good to get out there more. Because all we hear are the personal finance downsides of spending Bitcoin. They're all like, oh, well, you're triggering capital gains taxes. You have to pay the state and inflate the state. Like, you're not funding the state through paying capital gains taxes. The state funds itself by printing money. Like, the government spends 130% of tax receipts every year. And so that's where, like, I'm moving on from the old talking points of, like, you know, like, you can't use Bitcoin as a currency because the tax laws won't change. Like, no, I'm going to start right now using Bitcoin as my base money before the tax laws change, because that's how we win.
I think either way too, you're still paying, like, regardless of whether or not you're paying cap gains or you're giving revenue to the bank, like someone's still making money on that transaction. And I guarantee the bank is making significantly more money off of credit card payment processing systems.
That's a super great point. I've never said it like that. That's really well said.
Yeah, so I think there's that part. And then think about all the human time that's going to be saved because the transaction flows are significantly better. So, you know, the current transaction flow is pretty much like you see an item, you click buy, it generates a charge, the user scans or clicks the charge, confirms the payment, then the payment succeeds. That's like the success flow. And then even with like order ahead with the Oshi app, which is something I really like in terms of their flow, you can like take your time and you can actually like click the charge. It'll open up in your Lightning wallet, your whatever preferred Lightning wallet it is, and confirm the payment and send. And all you have to do is walk up and show the QR code. So like, think about how much time is wasted standing in line and slow processing through the credit card merchants, even with like the EMV chips that they have now. It takes a significant amount of time. So if you have like the entire world like saving like 20-30 seconds every single time, if not minutes every time, like how much more productive would we be? So not only are you like lowering the operating costs, you're like saving tons of human time that could then be dedicated to something else. And on another point, interesting on the no KYC aspect, with Azteco terminals, you don't need to provide any sort of identity until up to like $1,000. And then I thought about it using OpenNode, and I built an application you could hook this up to LN bits too. It just change the endpoint and change the allocation. But one thing I like about the open node is that you can specify the allocation, like Odell was saying earlier. So essentially, like, you could have a dedicated person in the community that has an open node account. Unfortunately, yeah, they have to, verify identity, whatever. But I still think that enables them to offer another revenue source, because then they can be that person for the community. All they have to do is generate a $5 charge with a percentage spread, so like 2 or 3%, and that's the cost that they pay for having that account. And on their end, they can generate a $5 charge, somewhat plus a 3% spread. The user can scan and pay it with whatever Lightning wallet that they want. The merchant receives instant credit for that balance. And if they're using OpenNode, they get the fantastic benefits that they offer, which is that allocation. So then if you're a merchant, you can just sell or buy Bitcoin from someone, and it's an automatic FX conversion. So you could even take 100% fiat if you don't want any exposure and just offer this. You essentially receive $5 plus the 3% spread minus the 1% processing fee. So you make 2%, and then you can give that person cash and know for a fact that that payment has settled. And you could do this for 10, 5, 10, 25, 100, whatever amount that you want to pay the charge. And you could do the same thing if you wanted to retain your privacy and you're okay with receiving sats and giving cash. It's almost like a real life DCA without any sort of like KYC if you were to hook it up into your own LN bits, and even set the fee rate potentially to save even more. So there's like all kinds of different approaches you could do to enter the Bitcoin circular economy and to exit the Bitcoin circular economy. And there's options for everyone. So if you're very privacy conscious, you can do the no KYC route. If you are not privacy conscious and you're more concerned about convenience, then you can approach it from that route too.
So Santos, are you actually you're setting up merchants with Azteco payment terminals too? You're onboarding them onto that as well as accepting Bitcoin?
We offer that. So there's basically like kind of a flow that we're using. Essentially, we have a partner. Their name is BitRamp, and they're an Azteco vendor. And their model is completely focused on minimizing risk and getting these terminals into the merchant's hands without them having to put up any cash for the terminal itself, or set up like to be able to have in their account to be deducted as like people purchase vouchers from them. So our partner is doing that, and we connect them with the partner. So we're working on a presentation to open up to the general public, and we're going to market it on like Eventbrite, LinkedIn, and Meetup, and Twitter, of course. So it's going to be called like Lightning for Business. I really like the term B-commerce, so maybe change the name there. But essentially, it'll cover all the different aspects of like needs from the business perspective. Like if you're a sole proprietor, you can use Zaprite or create your own invoice and bill it out. It's a great interface and a seamless process. It's easy to get onboarded. If you're a merchant like brick and mortar, you can use the Oshi app for marketing and discoverability. I wrote a point of sale app that just uses the OpenNode API. So if you need, like, if you're like also wanting to offer like quick sales, you can, click to generate charge. Someone scans it and pays it. If they want that novel experience. So then you kind of have those aspects. If you're an enterprise, then you could look at like converting a portion of your treasury, like using Swan Bitcoin as an example. If you want like a very easy like dollar cost averaging into that position and begin saving there. So that's kind of like how we imagine the strategy.
Yeah, just to piggyback off that DCA thing, whenever a business is accepting Bitcoin, a lot of the businesses that we talk with, like, they realize that there's not going to be some massive amount or group of people that are going to be paying with Bitcoin, at least not at this moment. So let's say they sell like a few coffees a week. Like, is that business going to be comfortable with holding on to like $12 worth of Bitcoin a week? Like, yes, yes, they are. So in a way, like every single time you make a purchase for a business that's accepting Bitcoin, and generally speaking, at this early stage, I'm finding most businesses are actually holding it. you're kind of like, these businesses are like DCAing by selling their products and services, which is a really interesting way to think about it.
Yeah, and it's like directly injecting them into the circular economy. So like right now, we kind of have like a circular economy of like earn and spend. So like earning, you can create content, you can provide goods and services, you can play games, you can earn rewards, you can stream and entertain, you can mine, and then to use it or to spend it, you can hodl, you can pay others directly in goods and services, you can buy gift cards, you can use single-use generated cards, or even now there's Bitcoin-backed cards, kind of like what Brian was talking about, related to like a Bitcoin checking account to hold in Sats, but immediately when you spend, there's an FX conversion to whatever respective currency, and then have pay for that good or service. So you could do it that way, or you can just pay directly in Sats, which to me like makes the most economic sense, in like the sense in terms of like time and savings, because then it ultimately makes everyone more productive. Like no one wants to stand waiting in line to pay for something. And one of the worst experiences you can have from a banking or checkout experience is to be declined. With Lightning, you have none of that. You don't have to even worry. Yet there may be a failed route, but I think that's where like using a Lightning service provider is particularly useful, because then you take advantage of not having to manage all of your own channels and having really good routing. And then the beautiful thing is, probably like kind of touched on this before, is like getting your funds off. Like if you are using a custody provider, then you're putting yourself at risk for being shut down. That's 100% true. But the thing is it's easier now than ever to withdraw. You can essentially specify a Lightning address as like in a setting somewhere, say this is my Lightning address, click withdraw, and then it automatically sends to whatever node is connected to that Lightning address. It could be self-hosted, or it could be another trusted provider. Who knows? Ideally, self-hosted. So then you can earn using Lightning service providers and then immediately withdraw or transfer off into something that's in your control. So then you're only ever putting like very small amounts at risk.
Or
And if you
even
need
on
to,
chain,
yeah, definitely.
right? Like I
The
remember,
new
do you guys remember the async, not to be confused with Strike, but I think they called it async strike, which was they were an LSP and you put in an on-chain address and they would just basically accept a bunch of Lightning payments for you. And then once it hit a threshold, it would send to an on-chain address. So you didn't have as much custodial risk.
The new dollar cost average is self-custody average, because no one should have any dollars at all. We shouldn't be talking about dollar cost averaging at all. We should be talking about self-custody averaging.
Just stacking stats.
Yeah. Hey, of note, IBEX actually enables businesses to accept payments on Lightning, and it will, after a certain threshold, get auto-directed to an on-chain address too, if they want. So very similar type of feature. It's
Oh,
very
that's
cool.
awesome.
Yeah, it's
IBEX was just out in Oklahoma. He was giving demos. It was awesome.
I got to talk to the IBEX guys and get them to add BIP47 payment codes for the auto withdrawals, because it's important to make perfect the enemy of good. So, I mean, we've been talking about brick and mortar a lot, but Santos, his passion project is Chamber of Satoshi and onboarding brick and mortar, but he also works for ZBD. I don't know exactly what you do over at ZBD, and we can get into that in a second, but or like what your role is over at ZBD. But ZBD is this idea of gaming with Lightning, and that is very much a circular economy as well, specifically on the streamer side, which obviously I have, as I don't stream video games, but I stream Dispatch, and it's audience funded, so it's particularly interesting to me. And I saw you guys announced today a new tool for streamers. Now, just to fully load up this question before you answer it, ZBD is also a custodial KYC'd LSP. How do you think about the, like, how do you think about all these different trade-offs and stuff in that type of streamer virtual circular economy?
Yeah, one thing I want to touch on though is that we don't require KYC to use our Zebedee app. In order to develop like higher limits, then you need a KYC, but all you actually need is an email and password to sign up.
Yeah, but what's the lowest limit?
You can send up to 250K sats per transaction, up to like, I think it's like 1 million or 2 million sats a
Okay,
day.
so it's not that bad on the sender side, but on the actual receiver side, it's you
Yeah.
kind of have to KYC, right? Like it's not.
No, I don't think so, because like a lot of the payments are extremely low. They're atomic actually. So when you're thinking about receiving, like actually a correction, I think it's about 45,000. And the beautiful thing about Lightning, which I touched on earlier, is you can immediately withdraw. So you only need to actually use the streamer product. You don't need any sort of KYC, and the average transaction sizes are small enough such that like users are not running into that problem right now.
So if I enabled it on Dispatch, on the streamer side, with just an email and a password, what are my limits? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, the minimum SAT would be, or the minimum receive amount is 1, and then the maximum per transaction is 45,000.
But there's not an amount. It's just on a per transaction basis.
Yeah, the limit for the total balance is 250,000, but you can transfer them
Okay.
off at any time.
So if you keep draining it, as long as it doesn't get above that amount.
Correct. And then I think
Gotcha.
the
It's an
weekly or
interesting
monthly limit's
trade-off.
like 1 million or 2 million. So we
Oh, there
open
you
it up.
go. Okay, 1 million sats for the monthly received total.
I believe so. I need to check the
So what is that?
specific
That's
limits.
like $500 right now.
It's pretty good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's decent.
Yeah. So, and you can transfer it off at any time. It's super convenient using the Lightning address. Many different wallet apps do support it. Like for example, Wallet of Satoshi also supports Lightning address, so it's seamless to transfer funds off of our or send them off of our Lightning platform. So there's that aspect of it. So with Streamer, what was the specific question there? Because
I
I just
know
wanted
you
to.
answered a lot of the. I loaded it. First of all, what's your role at ZBD?
Oh, my role, I'm the business lead, so I work very closely with our CTO, developing products and developing processes for engineering. So kind of like kind of lead product and
Cool.
engineering person.
Well, I mean, I love the team you guys have over there. So so show us this streaming product. What is this streaming product?
So I see the streaming product as a way for like the digital circular Bitcoin circular economy to develop. So if you go to zbd.gg/Santos, like you can see there's a Lightning address, there's a static charge QR code, and any wallet that supports LNURL could essentially scan this and pay you. So you can attach this like to your post. You can play games. We have a model called Play to Earn. So game developers will essentially pay you sats for playing their games. And you kind of have the aspect of streaming and entertaining. There's a lot of gamers that are also streamers, and we see that as incredibly, valuable and another way that people need to be able to earn sats. Because if you look at it currently, how have people been able to pay you using like Twitch as an example? You have to go through like US dollars, but then what if you want to pay with British pounds? There's a lot of actual user friction there. But the beautiful thing about sats is global money. So then you could essentially pay using any wallet that supports the LNURL protocol. And it's all you have to do is just add like a browser source widget or two to begin taking advantage of this. So now it's just an additional way to earn sats as a creator where you don't even like need to worry about fiat whatsoever. So it's like another way of earning essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think the virtual economy, it's just really fucking obvious. And I think, I mean, just in gaming in general, the overwhelming majority of young kids' first interaction with sats will be through games, and I think people are really sleeping on it.
Definitely. And imagine like a kid never having to get like a fiat bank account. Like if you start streaming when you're like 12 or 13 years old, you may never like even consider using fiat, and you'll automatically know like that the fiat banking experience is like significantly less or it's going to cost you a lot more time and be slower than like a lightning experience would. So they'll already have learned about sats and how to use sats, and how to earn them by that point.
Can't jump off that. So yeah, exactly. So little kid plays games, learns sats, right? And then say they become 13, 14, 15. I think there is a world where that 13, 14, 15-year-old becomes like a freelance bug tester for software, or is doing some other like remote job from their parents' Citadel, getting paid sats straight to their wallet, straight from their, like straight inside their parents' Citadel, nothing else involved. And so, because I think then what's going to happen at that point is businesses are going to direct deposit Bitcoin to their W-2 employees, but businesses are still going to have incentive to hire freelance workers with freelance arrangements. And these kids working from their parents' Citadels are going to be able to like have leverage. They're basically going to be like cheap offshore labor that they're going to be able to negotiate and say, sorry, I only take sats, and sorry, I'm not filling out your 1099. They're like, do you want my service or not? Like, and then the company is going to pay off-book sats for that labor because they need it. That's an example of the way that like the direct deposit Bitcoin paychecks and like the off-book Bitcoin circular economy is going to work hand in hand.
I mean, I do think it's going to be interesting for just the economy in general, the global economy in general, about how it can be very interconnected. I think a lot of, especially US-based businesses, will probably not use people that will refuse 1099s, but I think that's a different story.
But the market in the same way that like Bitcoin payment processors everywhere is widening the amount of places that gray market participants can shop because the point of sale can't tell the difference. The same thing is going to happen, that like the amount of jobs that will be able to go no 1099 is going to explode. Because currently it's hard to find a remote job at all that'll be no 1099.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like, I think kind of what you're saying is like we're going to migrate towards like a task-based economy where people are going to solve specific problems, but not necessarily work like at a career or a job, like a salary, where people are more like using whatever their unique skill set is to then solve the problems that are most interesting to them. And there'll be like this discovery aspect where you'll complete this task, and then all of a sudden, like, you receive sats for it, and then you can move on to a completely different sort of thing. And it'll be like this transaction, this very virtuous transaction cycle, essentially. Like, you need something done, you create like a particular post, and then someone discovers that, proposes a solution, and then it's paid in sats. And a person could be like a task creator or a task solver to some extent.
Definitely. And then you'll still get hired recurring from the same people, because like the mental weight of not having to find a new person every time will still be there for the business.
Yeah, that's really kind of how like Stackwork works. I believe it's called Stackwork. Really cool project whereby people can like complete these little micro tasks and earn sats from anywhere in the world.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that. That's by Paul Atoy, the same guy behind Sphinx.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another one. What is it? Is it Microlancer? .io, I think, is one. But right now they're like kind of very small paying, almost like micro tasks. I don't know how, like, I mean, seems like a little bit off topic, but like, how do you guys feel about this whole like gig economy concept? Like, isn't it kind of horrible for the person that's not an employee because they're a gig economy worker?
So I think it's a great question, and it was feeling a little bit like that. But I think Bitcoin like fixes that to a certain extent, right? Because like the money itself like doesn't rot, so it's like harder. So like it's easier to like do the tasks and have the money like not rot. But I definitely agree that there's like downsides to it, and I think we're already like the U.S. already feels kind of like a caste system. Like if you're a remote worker working inside your house and you just get Uber Eats delivered all the time, like that's already kind of like a caste system.
Yeah, and I mean, at Oshi, we implement sort of almost like a gig economy type thing. We say, hey, look, like Visa and MasterCard shouldn't have to get like 2, 3, 4, 5% of every single transaction just for like the privilege of sending ones and zeros over the internet. How about we keep that local? Like, how can we either reward the consumers or we reward like Bitcoiners who go around and they like get businesses introduced to Oshi or get their family and friends introduced to Oshi to help them take their first steps into a Bitcoin circular economy. To that end, I mean, it's like, as with all referral affiliate programs, like once you earn more than $600 in a calendar year, like you have to do a 1099. Of course, you could just say, all right, I'm done with that account and be done. But that's the unfortunate thing. But yeah, I mean, I do think in terms of like gig economy, the seamlessness of the money and like just the programmable aspect of it and the final settlement aspect allows you to pay workers instantly, at the time of every like purchase your referral makes in this case, or at the time of every sale a business makes in this case, because settlement's final.
Yeah.
There's no chargebacks. So it just kind of changes the game if we're thinking about gig economy type setups.
Dude, and Michael, we talked about that, about like how with payment splits and stuff getting more popular, like if you're then a bartender at a bar that chooses to start taking Bitcoin, then you're no longer just a bartender. Like you're almost then a salesperson at the counter. And if you can close the check for Bitcoin, you should receive a part of that sale. And Bitcoin allows that to happen.
Right. Yeah. And so
let's unpack this a little bit more, Michael, because, usually in general, I mean, there's a lot of like ref link bullshit scams in Bitcoin. And I don't really, I usually, it's usually a bad sign.
Right.
But with Oshi particular, it's a very interesting concept because you kind of have these. So if an Oshi user onboards a business, if they onboard them using their tag, right? So like I have my tag down below previously, like oshi.tech/Odell. If they onboard a business with that tag, 1% of the business that business does through Oshi, that person gets. So you're basically incentivizing people to go out there, do the pitch, onboard businesses onto Bitcoin, and as a result, they get a cut, right?
Exactly. Yeah. We're trying to make the circular economy go around. We're trying to incentivize people who are already like so passionate about Bitcoin as it is that never.
Yeah, I mean,
shut
I've
up
shielded
about
so
Bitcoin.
many businesses Bitcoin, and I have not gotten 1% back on them.
Right. So this is that opportunity. Yeah. Basically, like we have a valuable service we're providing for these businesses, and we charge less than Visa and MasterCard, substantially less in most cases. And at this stage, we choose to give all that back to the people that are actually participating in this economy and like getting businesses onboarded and getting them set up. And I'm not saying like you have to go into the trenches with these businesses and be like, all right, like, let me show you how to set up your BTC Pacer. Nothing like that. Like we don't expect.
No, freaks, you should do that.
That would be amazing if you did it. No,
Michael's not telling you to do that, but I'm telling you to do that. And Santos is telling you to also onboard them to Azteco at the same time. So
yeah, do all of those things, but it's not a requirement. It's not a requirement. You share that ref link, they hit us up. They're like, hey, we want to accept Bitcoin. Oh, and my friend over here that gave me this ref link said that we should do BTC Pay server. What do we do? Oh, perfect. Yeah, that would be great. That'd be the dream, actually. That's the dream.
I guess like my biggest concern is that we onboard all these merchants and they're on like one or two custodial regulated LSPs, and then it's really easy to blow that thing up.
Yeah,
but
and
I understand. I respect the fact that it's maybe part of the process because they're already using custodial regulated fiat methods anyway, and maybe just the fact that we have more competition than just a BitPay. I mean, this is not theoretical. Like we literally had Bitcoiners spent 2 years obsessed with onboarding merchants, and it was all onto the same custodial regulated provider. who turned out to be evil,
Mhm.
and that was BitPay.
That's why changing, yeah, like the social conversation around the like payments and like the reason why they matter like is important, because I still think, yeah, like a lot of people try to say like, oh, the we're so early, why like struggle at this, and they point back to that and how like, oh, it's not for payments then. But it's like, dude, the dollar sucks. Like, we all know that, but like doing business not with it is how you like win.
I just want to say that, Michael said earlier, like the way to win over businesses is not to like go in and like, tell them like the dollar's fucked and shit. I most of the businesses that I've onboarded have just been with the fuck the state type of onboarding. So there are multiple methods.
Yeah. It's there's a lot of people trying a lot of things, and fortunately now we have more than just like BitPay, and we have more than just like just like download this wallet, and like we have so many different payment providers, and if one of them turns out to be a bad actor, fortunately, everybody that's building apps right now, for anything of this particular use case, make sure that you're interoperable with as many payment providers as possible, because we're using an open source, in a fully interoperable monetary network. Like, leverage that. So yeah, if there's a BitPay scenario, well, hey, guess what, consumers, like businesses, we recommend you use this service now. And maybe,
well, and you
like,
also
it's
got
even
the
gonna be cheaper.
habit. All the customers are now in the habit of you taking Bitcoin. Like, so switching service providers is like going to be easier. And then also, I think to the point earlier about like even spending Bitcoin poorly is like better than spending credit cards. And I started thinking about that too. Like, holding, if you're fully Bitcoin and then just fully cash, that's one thing. But a lot of people on Twitter like are still holding dollars at Wells Fargo and dollars at Chase and dollars at Bank of America, and then still kind of like armchair quarterbacking about like the just circular economy stuff and why there's barriers to it. But it's like holding you. Like, I just don't, in the same way that spending Bitcoin even poorly is better than spending credit cards, like holding Bitcoin fully as your base money is better than holding dollars as your base money. And then your brain is going to start moving towards like understanding the mechanisms of like why a business would do it, or like why you spending Bitcoin at that business like makes sense to yourself, like personally.
Good points. I mean, this has been a fantastic conversation. I'm trying to think about where we want to go next.
Well, what about, like, there's a lot of Bitcoin meetups that I would say
Yes.
they are the people that are going to usher this in. Like, if you want one group of people in every single city across the country where you go, hey, here are the tools, here's the payment providers, here's like the Cash Apps or the Strikes or the Blue Wallets or the Moon Wallets, and for them to be able to take that information, package it up, and disseminate it out to everybody in their
100%.
community, like that is huge. And we're seeing it already. We're seeing it with the Chamber of Satoshi. Charlotte Bitcoin Meetup just had, their introduction to Bitcoin for businesses. You're having things going on in Kansas City. Obviously, Brian's already done like a lot of work in the LA area. Austin's blowing up with that. Like, this is the way, and it's grassroots. It's bottom up. It's not top down. The more we wait for the top down and sit on our hands, that it's just not going to be good, in my opinion. Like, Bitcoin wins no matter what. But going back to I think one of the first things you said on this pod, Matt, you were like, when when is it going to happen? Like, are we going to wait decades, or is it going to be like 5 to 7 years?
My time preference is low, but I'd prefer not to wait too long.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is how we do it. It's bottom up, like hit in the streets, talking with businesses. with whatever you have. Don't stress. Like,
I
just be
think
like, hey,
I
start the
think
conversation.
the meetup point is really strong, and I mean I think it's a point that's relevant to uh, both shows like Dispatch and on meetups. Is this idea that to scale is basically is 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 educating people to the point where they can go out and they can educate 10 more people, that those 10 people can then go out and educate 10 more people, and all of a sudden you have a bunch of people who are aware of the trade-offs, are aware of the options, are aware of the pros and cons of everything, and can actually be on the ground helping friends and family, helping local merchants. The meetups in particular over the last 2 years, and it's absolutely amazing because it coincided at the same time with basically global lockdowns,
Mm-hmm.
where people were being prohibited from meeting in person. The global meetup scene, Bitcoin meetup scene, has absolutely blossomed. It's one of the single biggest bullish fundamentals in Bitcoin that I have noticed over the last couple of years. Um, and so to the freaks out there, like if you're not participating in a local meetup, look to see if there is one. If there isn't one,
Mm-hmm.
maybe there's one that's like crypto. Those suck. Start your own. Start your own Bitcoin meetup. Find 2 or 3 like-minded people. Just start. You don't have to do anything fancy. You don't have to run a BitDevs or something. Like meet up at a local pub or something. Convince the
Yeah.
pub to accept Bitcoin. Bartenders are the number one easiest target to accept Bitcoin. I
Yeah.
don't know what it is. Maybe it's just because I'm drunk at that point, but for whatever reason, it seems like if you stay at a bar for an hour and a half, um, you should be able to convince them to at least accept Bitcoin at a bare minimum fashion. So I want to talk a little bit on the meetup note, Michael. You had this Bitcoin block party in Austin. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So, I overheard Kyle Murphy talking on like a John Vallis podcast, and he's like talking about Bitcoin and community, and I'm like, yes, like absolutely. So I got in my car and I drove down to Austin, and we onboarded like, I don't know, 13 or 15 businesses on a very like small popular street in Austin. It's called Rainy Street. Majority of them were food trucks. It was so easy just to like walk up and like talk to the owner and be like, hey, do you want to accept Bitcoin and offer Bitcoin rewards? And they were like, sure. And some of them were harder to convince than others, but some of them were like, I've been looking for this. And I was like, yeah, obviously that brought a smile to my face. And so we set it up, and normally the Austin scene is really strong, right? Always. There's a couple hundred people at the meetups, each meetup, and so on. We're estimating around 600 people showed up to this block party on a Thursday night at 8 p.m. To come out and support these businesses that are accepting Bitcoin. And we provided some incentives, additional incentives, for the consumers in the form of rewards to actually get out there and participate, right? The businesses saw the value in it. It brought them more business than they'd probably ever seen on a Thursday night. The bar was happy as well. Like, it was a really cool thing. And this is something that's replicable all over the country as well. And it already is happening. Like Santos's Satoshi Day that they were talking about, it's kind of very similar in nature. Like, you're coming out and you're celebrating businesses that are now accepting Bitcoin. You're showing your support for them. Kansas City is going to have one as well. These are going to be everywhere. So again, like, the time is now. Like, this is in my opinion, a fairly critical moment in Bitcoin. And it's funny too, because like whenever you say anything like that, you always think about like, say, Roger Ver, like everybody needs to accept Bitcoin, and like
The babies are dying.
the babies are dying. But it's like, you know what? Like, this time we have Lightning and we have tools and infrastructure and to make this work. And so we're gonna try it. Um, on layer 2, right? See what happens.
One thing too, I think that's really interesting is like the meetup. You kind of start talking about different ideas, different presentations to help the local community get inspired by one another. One of our meetup members, Adam, was talking about wanting to do a presentation to help seniors essentially begin stacking sats, and then how to transfer it to a cold storage wallet or it basically transferred to cold storage, using different cold cards at his house to get them the education that they need while risking like very minimal. So then you start thinking about like how can you serve more people? You can take those sort of presentations. You can either record them individually, like tailored for like an online format, or you can do it locally at the local level. So then you have options to select from. Whether like you're an individual that feels comfortable like executing it on your own, or you need your handheld a bit to get there. And then eventually, once you have enough educational resources, create a help and support portal along with many different guides to get to level 1, to get to level 2, to get to level 3, and kind of take you throughout your Bitcoin journey. So that's something that we're thinking about a lot, like at the Arizona Bitcoin Network. And a lot of people are very passionate and very knowledgeable, and I think it's on us to like lean on the community a bit and open it up to where people can have those presentations to broadcast that message or to share videos. So like the community is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, and like let's not forget about economic development centers or corporations in these towns and cities as well, right? And I think you kind of alluded to some of that too, but it's like a lot of these, like in Redding. So I started this in Redding, California, and I actually had some support from the local economic development committee, and like they were interested. They were very curious, like just like the mayor of Miami and like all of these politicians are starting to talk about like Bitcoin and stuff, whether or not they actually give a shit about it. That's game theory. So tap into local, community organizers, right? Like we're not going to the federal government for this. Like ask someone in your community that focuses on economic development, and the local chamber of commerce. And if you're not getting anywhere with that, then just start your own, right, Santos? So like, but
Yeah.
pretty soon they're gonna be coming to you, and they're gonna be asking how they can empower their community, or maybe how they can get Visa and MasterCard out of their community. And
Yeah. One cool thing too, like you can align the incentive. So like if you start a meetup and you're like, how do I get money to pay for a venue? If you're out there onboarding businesses using Oshi, I think it was touched on earlier that there's like a referral. You earn essentially sats for whenever sats are transacted using the app. So then you can essentially be out there onboarding businesses, earn the 1% to support your nonprofit. And then from there, use that to book venues, to purchase books or educational resources, marketing materials for the business, which is something that we've developed over here, taking inspiration from like Amex's Shop Small and tailoring that to Bitcoin. Those are all things you can do to massively impact and increase the understanding of Bitcoin and getting access to it, and to be able to fund your operations without even necessarily like needing to like to sell like product or services or fundraise.
Yeah, that would be we we were talking about this the other day, right? And it's like if that works out in that way, that's going to be pretty powerful. Before you know it, you could have cities really pushing for Bitcoin adoption because it helps the city. So it's going to be pretty crazy.
What are you guys' thoughts? So like nowadays you go to a merchant, right? A brick and mortar merchant. Most of them are using like Toast or Clover or Square. There's like I assume Michael knows these stats. Michael, do you know the stats of the brick and mortar payment terminals?
I think Square. So Toast, my understanding for restaurants, has about 30% of the market. That's my understanding. And Square has a quarter, I think, of like, let's say all like small businesses in the United States. There's Clover. Clover has different apps. They have like a much more open like app store type thing that you could develop on.
Yeah.
For those that want to get into that, Square has a nice open API as well to do cool stuff. Toast is completely closed.
Dude, I have a good Toast story if that's what you're asking.
Well,
But you keep going.
I mean, my question was, do we think is one of them going to come out with Bitcoin support? And
Oh.
how does that change the equation? Is that something you guys think about, or?
Yeah, I've more like, I think it's going to be slower to roll out than people realize. That's my understanding. That's my impression. I think it's far more likely that there's going to be some sort of acquisition to do that. Like even Cash App is moving a lot faster than Square, even though they're under the same block umbrella. Like, you know, I'm optimistic they'll be rolling out a Bitcoin terminal, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, personally. But I think that's also a really big opportunity for other companies to help provide bridge services.
But I'm not even saying like a specific terminal, right? I'm saying just an update to their existing terminals.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
it just displays the QR code, and then anyone can pay it from any Lightning wallet.
Yeah, my understanding is still that they're mostly looking for acquisitions. Like Toast, to my knowledge, doesn't have a Bitcoin plan. I don't have like insider information.
So I sideloaded BTC Pay Server on a Toast tablet, and we had to use an SD card and load the like SDK as a web URL in order to get it to run on there. And we still got it to where they could close the Toast terminal and then open BTC Pay. So that was sick. And then I ended up with on the phone with the guy from Toast, who was like an outside salesperson for them, who is a Bitcoiner and learns and listens to like all the shows. And so that was awesome. But yeah, agreed with you, Michael, that Toast is probably the lowest like of who will move first. I do think that like I'm hyper bullish, and I think Square will move this year, like, or early next year. And then I think what will happen after that is either McDonald's, Taco Bell, or Starbucks. Basically, all the Fortune 500 companies that are the two next dominoes to fall are, you're right, one of these guys either doing it through acquisition or turning it on, and all the Fortune 500 companies that are running their pilots in El Salvador, so like Starbucks, Taco Bell, McDonald's. One of them, my gut says that their CFO and their financial people are going to realize that it's going well, and they're going to turn on a US-based pilot. So I think you're going to see some sort of press release from McDonald's that says like, hey, like select markets now have Bitcoin turned on. Like I think you're going to see something like that as a big next domino.
So let me, I tend to agree with Brian that's going to happen sooner than people think. Let me rephrase the question. If, let's say hypothetically in a month, one of the major existing terminals starts accepting Lightning payments by showing a QR code that any wallet can pay, does that change any of your strategies, or does it just speed things up?
For me personally, it just speeds things up. I mean, I'm with Oshi personally. Are you talking about like the projects that I'm working on, or
no? So yeah, so with Oshi, let's say in a month, one of the major terminals starts accepting Bitcoin with just like a software update. They don't need new hardware. Oshi, that's great for Oshi, right? That's great for the Bitcoin circular economy. Or am I?
Absolutely. Yeah, we are not a POS. We get businesses connected with POS systems. We aim to provide like the Bitcoin rewards loyalty marketing for small businesses that are willing to do so, willing to incentivize and entice customers with Bitcoin. So like, let's say like if Strike and Square has a partnership or something, right? And then it like gets rolled out. Okay. Like that would be fantastic. That would be phenomenal. And even so, like businesses could still choose whatever payment provider they want. I mean, granted, like let's say if that happens and whoever, like if Square partners with somebody and then they roll out Lightning, like everyone's going to use that if they're already using Square. But the cool thing is that they don't have to. They can, opt into the monetary network using a lot of different things. So that's what's really, really exciting. It'll hasten things. It'll also legitimize it, and it'll make it far easier for me to walk into a business and say, hey, like, did you know that your terminal accepts Bitcoin payments? Want to do Bitcoin loyalty, just like, Shake Shack is doing, or just like, these cash cards are doing on Cash App and all this stuff. Like, do you want to do it yourself? Like, do you want to be empowered and have that ability? And so, yeah, I mean, that would be fantastic.
An interesting thing too, I would like to piggyback off of that, is like definitely the rewards aspect. Like with play to earn, we're seeing significantly higher rates of retention. So like, what does enabling a business to be able to offer Bitcoin rewards back enable for them? Like they'll be able to lower the payment processing costs, offer a percentage back on the purchase. And I can imagine like many people like going back to that restaurant specifically because it has a Bitcoin loyalty program. So the the businesses that are Bitcoin powered essentially will retain their customers better as well, which is incredibly powerful for them, because acquiring new customers is always significantly more costly than retaining your existing customers.
Yeah, and just playing that game theory out. Let's say there's a business that has opted to take a certain percentage of all Bitcoin payments and hold them on their balance sheet. Let's say they hold the full amount every coffee they sell. They're going to give 10% sats back on this cup of coffee. In a year's time, if they're quote unquote feeling lucky, right, they could hold on to that Bitcoin. And do they anticipate that the price of Bitcoin is going to go up more than 10% within 12 months or within 18 months? If they're willing to hold the Bitcoin for that time, that 10% discount or sats back promotion to acquire those new customers was free.
Mm-hmm.
It was free.
Yeah.
And that gets absolutely insane. Like if that particular flywheel effect plays out, if that game theory plays out, that would be the craziest thing that I think could ever happen.
Look, and to get hyper bullish on that, dude, Bitcoiners need to be buying fiat businesses for sats on the dollar. Like Bitcoiners need to be focused on their own sats flow. Like that's the reason why I don't like the like dollars as checking account, Bitcoin as savings account thing, because every single Bitcoiner is a business. Like every single Bitcoiner is a merchant. Like you need to be focused on your sats flow, and we need to be focused on acquiring fiat physical places so that we can continue to like make the world a better place. Like if these businesses are not going to start upgrading to the new money, then we're going to buy them for sats on the dollar. We're going to upgrade them, and we're going to continue like doing this.
Love the energy, guys. And look, this has been a fantastic conversation. I appreciate all of your time. I think it's a very important topic, especially the whole meetup grassroots, being the change you want to see in the world in your local community. Be good to your neighbors. We're about to hit the 2-hour mark. I want to be courteous of your time. I like to wrap this up with final thoughts. Santos, we'll start with you. Final thoughts.
I love the conversation. Absolutely honored to be here and like share some of these ideas and strategies, discuss what's going on in Arizona. So if you're ever in Arizona, please just check out, meetup.com/ I think AZ Bitcoiners, or that might be our Twitter handle, and join us for a drink.
Cheers. Thanks, Santos. Brian, final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Look, the lockdown changed a lot of things for me. Like it made me realize that Bitcoin's happening right now in person. And when I heard just appreciate like what you and Marty do. And when Marty interviewed like Mike from Bitcoin Beach, it made me realize that like all the tools are available right now. And so having like Oshi App and Michael come down to Southern California like at Next Burger that day when we had that party, and then watching what Michael has done, and watching what Kyle's doing in Austin, and like meeting the guys in Kansas City, just got back from Oklahoma, like that all means like a really lot to me. So Bitcoin means a lot to me, and I'm thankful to like do this with all of you and like honestly help the world.
Cheers. I appreciate you as well, Brian. Thanks for coming on the show. Michael, final thoughts.
Yeah, I love all you guys. Thanks to everyone in the chat as well for showing up, man. Like I was telling you before, Matt, like I grew up on TFTC and Citadel Dispatch, basically like religious following there. Yeah, I think it's just time for people to kind of get out there and like shake a business owner's hand, right? And just start the conversation. like what Brian was saying, what Santos was saying, like it's happening. We can start like a little piece of Bitcoin Beach, like in cities all across the country, all across the world. What the tiny like town of El Zante, El Salvador, right, with a small group of people and a lot of passion, we're able to do, like that should be the thing that gets people going, that like this can happen anywhere, right? And even if the reasons are a little different for why it happens, right, like it can happen. So like we're rolling into Miami, to Nashville, the meetups are blowing up in Austin, like everywhere, right? Phoenix. Just keep it going, everyone.
Fuck yeah.
Keep it
Thanks,
going.
Michael. It was a pleasure kicking with you. Are you guys going to be in Miami?
Yeah, we'll be there.
Brian will be
Definitely.
there. Michael, you'll be there?
Yeah, I'll be there. We'll have probably a couple dozen businesses as well that are
Fuck yeah.
on Oshi app there accepting Bitcoin. It's gonna be cool. So yeah, go out and support them.
Santos, you'll be there too?
Yep, definitely going to be there.
Well, Santos, I look forward to meeting you in person. Michael and Brian, I look forward to kicking it with you in person again. So I guess, Michael, like people should download Oshi app before they go to Miami so they can see which merchants are available there.
Yeah, they should. Yeah, if you guys are interested in slinging some sats around to local businesses, then yeah, you should check out the Oshi app. Should I show your code, Matt?
Yeah, show my scam code.
It's a scam code. So Oshi.tech/Odell.
Yeah, if you want to support the show. I joke around that all refs are scams, but
hey, this one is going to support, whatever you want it to support, Matt. So
at least
Citadel Dispatch or open
support
source
Citadel
development.
Dispatch and Bitcoin circular economy. Two noble goals. I would say the circular economy is a more noble goal, but
I think the money needs to go to Matt because we need Matt to be acquiring laundromats and barista
dude, I'm not
stands
buying
and,
any
like,
fiat
all this stuff.
businesses. Brian, you could buy the
No, and then
fiat
you convert them into
businesses.
Bitcoin, and then you can. Dude, this is going to be a show. This is going to be a show on CNBC. It's going to be like the bar rescue, but it's going to be fiat business rescue, and Bitcoin business owners are going to go in and help people.
Okay, guys,
Yes.
if you use my ref link, I will put the sats away, and maybe I'll buy a laundromat in the future and convert it to a Bitcoin standard.
Yes.
No promises. I love all you guys. This was a great conversation. Thank you to all the freaks who joined us. I hope you found this conversation as helpful and as interesting as I did. Reminder, next week's dispatch will be in person in Miami. If you want to join us for that, that's citadeldispatch.com/Miami. Space is limited. Drinks will be included so we can kick it and have a good time. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to broadcast that live. I'm going to try to if I can. If not, it'll be posted, immediately following the live conversation. Yeah, with all that said, thanks to our guests one more time, and thanks to the freaks. Cheers, guys.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Love you, freaks. Looking forward to kicking with you all in Miami. Stay humble, stack sets.